Welcome to Morning Sips and Soul Shifts. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Morning Sips and Soul Shifts. I hope you are having a beautiful day so far, wherever you are tuning in from. This is a special little mini-sode for you today, and it's one that's close to my heart because it's a bit of a milestone as of when this episode is going to be released, if you were listening on the day that this was released, yesterday, July 13th, was my dad's 5-year anniversary, I guess, if you will. Sounds very strange to call it an anniversary, but we're going with it. 5-year anniversary of my dad's Angel Day, death anniversary, whatever you want to call it. And wow, this feels like a big one. I just kind of passed my mom's 5-year about 6 months ago. Cannot believe I'm here again having this very similar conversation with you. I am not going to reflect on this every single year per se, but again, 5 years, it feels like a big one. It's one that I know many of you in this community are going through, and if not like the 5-year mark per se, it's just, every year without our loved one feels like a milestone, feels like, wow, I can't believe it's been another year. I can't believe it. It feels surreal. It still doesn't feel like my life 5 years later. I have to say, this is a much bigger reflection for me than just his death. It's more about his life, if you will. And yes, there's definitely aspects of his death and his health decline from prostate cancer and all the things that I can't help but think about, but that happens on a daily basis. But today, and because I'm sharing this with you guys, I didn't want to just go on and on and on about my dad, although I would love to do that all day long and share every ounce and every piece of him with all of you. And that will be woven through today's conversation. But I really wanted this to be about, now that I am 5 years out from losing him, how that has impacted my life in terms of lessons I have learned, things that I have been taught because of his presence, the lessons he wasn't even trying to teach me, but somehow did, and things that I have since walked away with, that I have since realized, that I have since become aware of, that I think is going to be, I hope is going to be really beneficial for all of you to hear as well. What I really want to share with you all today is what I've taken away from that, and quite literally how that has changed my life. And I want to share those reflections with you because I think there's a lot that you can probably see yourself in my story, I guess. And there's just a lot of frankly really big life altering takeaways that I've had. A lot of big realizations, some aha moments, some bigger, some smaller, but either way, they're game changing things. And I want you to hear these. I want you to absorb them. I want you to consider them. And depending on where you are in your grieving experience, this might hit differently for you, but that's okay. We all can just honor exactly where we're at. But as I take these moments to remember him and reflect, it's his legacy that I'm reflecting on for sure, but not just a specific thing that he would say to me. It's more the lessons that I was taught in his presence that I maybe didn't realize at the time, but I realize now. The lessons that he wasn't even trying to teach me, while also being a person in my life, perhaps one of the very, very few people in my life, quite frankly, who truly embodied the essence of who he was. And I'll get more into that and exactly what I mean by that. But all that to say, it's something that I want to share with you today very vulnerably in hopes that this inspires you too, because that's what we're here to do on this podcast, right? Figure out how to live our best, most abundant, and amazing life with grief. And I think these reflections are really important to do. I really want to like go a little bit deeper here with you guys today because like I said, I really want you to take something bigger and deeper away from this conversation today too. That being said, I feel like I have to start by mentioning how much has happened in the last 5 years and acknowledge first the time that I lost my dad in. I lost my dad during what one could argue was like the height of COVID or very near the height. It was July of 2020. That was quite an experience, and I'm sure many of you can empathize with that, whether you unfortunately lost someone due to COVID specifically or circumstances around COVID, or it just so happened that their death was during the height, just not being able to see him as I normally would be able to and being limited to, phone calls and things like that. And I don't wanna harp on that too much, but I think about that with my mom too, anytime that their death anniversary comes around, right? Like, I can't help but remember and kinda take myself back to those days and what I was thinking and what I was feeling and reflect on everything I was handling at the time. I had also just gone through a breakup and with my now husband, and we were slowly in the process of kind of talking again and rekindling things, if you will, but we had a long way to go. And it was just such a tumultuous time in my life. And I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I kept working. I don't know. I look back and I know for a fact now, being a grief coach, being someone who works with people on all of this, and just, growing up and living life and learning things. I was in complete and utter survival mode. And I have no doubt if you are listening to this podcast of all podcasts, you know exactly what I mean by that. And maybe you're there right now. So I just want to acknowledge you. I want to validate that if that is where you're at, because it's wild, honestly, to think back to those early stages before my dad even officially died, right? Because at least in my case, he had a health decline. There was I remember having those realizations like, oh my God, I am going to lose another parent. Like, wow, this is actually happening. So that's happened. I got engaged, I got married, I've had a child since then. Like, it's just crazy to think about all of these milestones, the big things, the little things that I've been through without my dad, been through without my mom. And it's something I continue to I'm not gonna say struggle with, but I just continue to process, and new things come up every day. And I won't harp on this because we just did an episode, by the way, I think it was literally last week on navigating firsts and milestones, so we have a whole separate conversation about that. But I say all of that because I think it is really important for us, especially the more time goes on, to really have that time to reflect on where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going. And I hope you take a few moments to do that today or just sometime soon if you haven't already, because you might not realize how much you've grown, how much magic there is in those moments, in that time. You deserve so much credit for everything that you are balancing and enduring and trying to navigate while also perhaps having other responsibilities. Maybe it's children, a job, friends, family, just life, right? There's no rule book here. So those are the things that I look back on, and at the end of the day, I give myself a little pat on the back, and I hope you do the same thing because we all deserve it. We all deserve that extra, boost of love and self-compassion and just recognition for everything that we did endure, perhaps are still enduring or still in the midst of going through, again, depending on where you are in your grief and loss experience. And it's important, and I want you to give yourself that gift. So, just to dig into kind of the crux of the conversation today, I'll be very honest with you guys. I'm spitballing on a lot of this if you can't tell, but it's so interesting. I was thinking about what I wanted to say, at least high level, in this episode. And I was on a walk with my daughter, and it started flowing out of me. Literally, like I was in my notes app talking into my AirPods. It was almost like this meditative state walking of just like what I wanted to say and what it is that I have walked away with since my dad's death. And so those are the thoughts that I want to share with you all. And basically, there are some very high level themes, I guess, if you will. And really, it's lessons and things that I've taken away from that experience that I want to apply to my life to make my life more joyful, make my life more fulfilling, and make me, frankly, just a better person and someone who genuinely loves their life. And if that is something you want for yourself too, listen up because this episode is definitely for you because there's just so much to dig into here. But in the interest of time today, let's start here. So, I think a big takeaway that I have from my dad's presence in my life is to do the things you love. Is that one of the most cliche things I've ever said? Yes, probably. But let me explain here. For those of you who don't know, my dad was a brilliant criminal defense attorney and quite successful in his own right. I don't even mean financially here. I just mean he was extremely good at what he did. And he was a killer trial lawyer. And I had the pleasure of witnessing that myself in various hearings that I sat on as I was growing up. And let me tell you, he didn't even find that piece of himself until later in life. He didn't go to law school until I think he was like 45. It was like closer to when they had me. Actually, my dad was a little bit older when they had me. But I will never forget the day he said to me, again, as cliche as this might sound, Tara, I hope you find something that you truly love to do, specifically for work. Because when you love what you do, it's true what they say, you will never work a day in your life. That's what I've found in law, in practicing law, and I hope you find that too. And listen, of course he had his tough days, his long days, right? As we all do. But he kind of found his purpose in that. He found his calling in that. He found something that he was really good at. In contrast, he was also a brilliant artist. I mean, genuinely so talented. He was a fantastic oil painter. He was a sketch artist who worked with charcoal and certain types of pens that I can't even remember the name of now. But I say all of this because as I've grown older and the more time has passed since he left the physical world, the more I've come to understand what life with grief truly is. And frankly, I've stepped into a more spiritual side and have embraced a more 30,000-foot view of my life. And I've come to understand how valuable that idea is, what he said to me there. And how amazing is it that, I had this example in my life of someone who was able to embody both, who was able to embody such a dichotomy, such two different sides to himself. That is not something I think enough of us explore or take seriously, or that it is so vastly different that we're like, is this right? Like, and these two parts of myself are competing and they feel so opposite and so wrong. It is crazy how often this happens, you guys. I have soul purpose and transformational life coaching clients that I have. It's I see this more times than not. Seriously. Like at least 50% of the time, maybe even more, where people feel a bit drawn in two different directions and they're like, how do I honor both? And what is so incredible about my dad is he genuinely leaned into and lived out his gifts, each of them being so vastly different, which I think is one of the most fun parts for me as his daughter looking back on him and his life. And I want to call this out as I'm reflecting on these 5 years without him. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you today, because this is like the essence of the work that I do, and it just lights me up and it excites me, is I personally am tapping more into my soul and my purpose and what lights me up more than I ever have. And it is something that I want so badly for you to tap into and explore too. I see around me how many people are not living in alignment with their soul's purpose, with their dharma, if you will. It's why I got certified to coach people in that, because the process, you guys, it's transformative. But even if you don't work with me or with a coach or whatever, like this is what I just want for you as a listener, as a griever, as someone who has been through something so devastating, whatever that looks like for you. And it's too important to ignore. And I think that is one of the very weird and sick and kind of twisted gifts that loss and living this life with grief can give us. It makes us sit and reevaluate and think about those things. Because, if you're listening to this, you probably know all too well that what was once important maybe just isn't anymore, or things that weren't important before are now more important than ever. And so badly, we often just want to rediscover a happy life and what that looks like and what that feels like for us now when we're ready. And that's so valid. All of us should want that. We all deserve that. So, in saying all of that, again, just thank you, Dad, for being such a beautiful example of that for me in my life. And I hope by me saying this, it is a conduit to being someone in your life who gently challenges you to think about that. So I ask you to reflect on that for yourself. Are you living in your highest good? Are you living in alignment? Are you living in a way that is true to your soul, in a way that lights you up? Whether that be your hobbies, what you do for work, who you have around you, your friends, your family. Are you making good choices? Are you making aligned choices with things that feel good, things that make you feel alive after you might be feeling so just kind of dead inside after going through something really difficult? So think about those things. And if the answer was no to any of those questions, think about what changes you can make with some time, with some intentional thought behind it, with a little bit of, day by day actions, just little baby steps, as always. And just to bring it back to my dad for a second, with all of that being said about him, I would be remiss if I, said that being a lawyer or being an artist was like all he was or all I remember him by. No, not at all. Quite the opposite. I just love to reflect on that because I actually don't know if he felt this way, but I certainly do as his daughter, that I truly think he tapped into and lived his divine purpose here when he was here in the physical world. And I just admire that so much because it is a beautiful journey of self-discovery. It's one I'm on as well. And the reason I brought up him not going to law school and stuff until 45 is I just want to instill in you, and I think just with social media and just hustle culture and all the things we're inundated with lately, it can feel like we're really behind. It can feel like we're moving too slowly, or, if we've been through a loss, like we're taking 20 steps back now. My friend, if you're feeling any of that, please release it. Do your best to release it because that is not a burden you should carry. And we are all on our own timelines. This is very cliche too. I know, just bear with me, but like it's not a competition. And trust me, there's things that I definitely feel like I should be further along with now, or, I wish I had done certain things earlier, or, whatever it is. But then I also have to have the thought of maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I wasn't in a position to be doing what I'm doing now. I just feel like there is this divine timing in life that we should pay attention to. And certain things might be unfolding for us or coming into our orbit at the time that it does. I definitely feel like there's some divine leading, there's some divine timing, there's just a little more going on out there than we might even be aware of. But regardless of whether you believe in any of that, just trust the path that you are on, and what's meant for you will come your way when you are ready for it. But just to switch gears here a little bit, when I think about my dad, both of my parents, really, it's interesting because with this time that has gone by, one of the frankly scarier parts to time passing is you inevitably forget super specific conversations, right? It's just our brain only has so much capacity, I think. And of course, there are certain conversations or moments with my dad that I remember very clearly and I reflect on fondly. But there were many that I simply can't remember, or I remember where we were and the topic that we were talking about or the general vibe of the conversation, but I just can't remember those specific words as much as I wish I could. What I remember is his essence. The essence of that conversation, of that hug, of that phone call, of whatever it was. I remember how he made me feel. Not only father to daughter, but like, again, going deeper here, soul to soul. It's that classic expression of people might not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. That's what I remember about my mom and dad. And I think that's such an important takeaway for us because it really, like I said, we're going deeper here in this episode, you guys, but when we think about our legacy and even maybe reflect on your loved ones, whoever it is you're missing right now, reflect on certain conversations. Think about how much you actually remember. And maybe you remember a lot and you do remember certain things that were said. And if so, good for you. Sadly, that is not how my memory works. But I just think that expression, it's one of my favorite expressions because it's so true. It 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 is what we're remembered for. It might be certain actions, but like the specifics of all of that, when we die or when we just leave a conversation with someone or you just met someone and you're maybe at home that night and you're reflecting on how the night went, like do you maybe remember exactly what someone said to you? Yeah, maybe not, but you remember the vibes, right? You remember how they made you feel. And it's one of the most impactful and beautiful things that my dad really and my mom have left upon me, this imprint that they have left upon me. It's how they made me feel as their daughter and just as a human being here. So, again, I ask you, what do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to make people feel? When they walk away from you or remember you one day, whether that is in the short term or the long term, what is the impression that you want to leave them with? What do you want your essence to be? Is it light, compassionate, goofy, intelligent, sensitive, good listener, right? So I think it's really important to reflect on those things and give that some thought because honestly, you guys, those are like a lot of the journaling that I've done and a lot of the deep thought that I've put into my life and the type of person that I want to be, particularly since my parents died. Those are the things that I ask myself. Those are the things where if I am getting frustrated over something or if there's something that my husband or my daughter's doing that's driving me crazy or I'm on the road and there's a crazy driver or whatever, things happen, right? How do we process those things? And then how do we react to them? What are we putting out into the world? Are we putting out kindness? Are we putting out compassion? Are we putting out judgment and coldness? Right? And I think these are important questions to ask ourselves too, especially I'm not certainly not going to get into this here, but with the global climate right now, the political climate, there's at least as of the time of this recording, there's some crazy and scary things going on right now. And we need more love and empathy and understanding in the world now more than ever. And outside of anything global or political or anything like that, that's not what I'm here to even get into today. It's just let's, again, have that 30,000-foot view and look at how we are treating ourselves and how we are speaking to ourselves and how we're treating others and how we're speaking to others. And how much anger are we holding on to? How much fear, longing, wallowing, stuckness, pain are we holding on to that we might be imparting, whether consciously or subconsciously, on ourselves or other people, right? So that is a gift that my dad gave to me for sure, was this ability to like check myself, right? And check in on that. And also just because of his personality and who he was just a deeply compassionate and kind, very, very thoughtful, beautiful man. And I've said this many times on the podcast, so I won't belabor this part too much, but he was such an old soul. I would joke all the time, they just don't make him like my dad anymore. He was like not of this generation, like not of this time. I swear. He was happy with the minimum. He didn't need much. He didn't want for much. He wanted, safety and certain comforts and, for my mom and I and him and everyone to be safe and happy. And, but he didn't want all the material things and the external validation and all of those things that I feel like so many of us want and crave nowadays. And I have to check myself on that all the time, you guys. With this digital world that we live in, it's hard. It's hard. But anyway, I invite you to think about those questions that I threw out there, maybe even journal on that, but really give that some thought, because you owe it to yourself to think about your legacy, and you owe it to yourself and to others around you to be the best version of yourself that you want to be, right? Another thing that I kind of just briefly mentioned there randomly, but is another thing that I think is something I certainly see society needing to work on this a little bit better nowadays, is listening. Really good listening skills. I remember my dad's, again, his compassion, his patience, his incredible ability to listen and not be quick to judge or give his own advice or unsolicited input like so many of us are quick to do nowadays, myself included. I'm very guilty of this. I'm not saying you do this, but I think we can all take a step back and be like, okay, like how often do I really listen, not just to listen and, like, okay, I look like I'm listening, but like, how often are we really hearing someone? And my dad was just an amazing, amazing example of this. He listened, he held space. And honestly, I have to laugh because he did this so well that I would actually have to ask for his feedback sometimes, because I actually wanted it. I wanted his input. He was almost like too good at this. Like, I was like, Dad, can you give me a little more here? Like, okay, the listening's great, the processing and all that's great, but like, give me a little something here. And I can laugh about it now, but all jokes aside, it was such a good lesson for me, and especially now as a coach and someone who witnesses others' grief as I do, to not only listen, but again, to really hear people and read between the lines and not just be listening just to respond. I think that is something that a lot of people are lacking nowadays. And again, it's not, I think there could be many things to blame for that, and I'm not here to dissect that. I'm certainly not a psychologist or anything of the sort, and just why that is. But again, I think it's like a big product of the world that we live in right now. I see this all the time on social media where people are very quick to comment or put their judgment out there, but they don't have the full story. They don't have the full context. And I'm like, my God, can we just like slow down before we impart our unsolicited comment or opinion? And it's so easy to do nowadays with social media because we're all behind our phones. And, it honestly kind of scares me. It truthfully does. It scares me for my daughter. It's, there's a lot of compassion and there is a lot of compassionate, beautiful people out there, but it is very scary. The negative, brutal comments that you see out there. And so, all of that to say, it truly takes skill and coming from a really heart centered place to be able to hold space for a person like that. And I feel like that is something that I personally am trying to get better at every single day, professionally, personally, right? With just people in my circle. I am half my mom though, and I definitely lean more to her personality, and I am a talker at times, if you can't tell. It's why I have a freaking podcast. And I think so many of us, we just want to be able to have a helpful, meaningful response. I think in a lot of cases, our quickness to respond is actually coming from a good place. But it's just a reminder today that there is such a sacredness. But it's just a reminder today that there is such a sacredness to also just being and listening and absorbing and then formulating a response. So let me reflect this back to you. When was the last time that you truly listened, not just to listen and seem supportive, but to really hear someone? And when was the last time that you genuinely held space for someone? And in turn, when was the last time that you really had good, solid space held for you? And I hope that was recently. I hope both of those things were recently. But with being around a presence like my dad and no longer having that in my life, all I can say is it's something that I ask myself now. And it's something that I have just learned to be much more aware of. All right, so just a couple last things here. One of the other things that I've really taken away, not only just from my dad, but just the deaths of my parents overall, is being so present. It's something I really wanted to bring up and share with all of you because I think all of us need more of this. And my dad, again, he was a very, very special person, and he was so good at this, at least in my eyes, at being present, whether he was painting, listening to his old radio as he painted. Like, I'm not joking, you guys, like literally a radio that looked like it was out of like the 50s, probably. Like, had one of those until he died. I think I still have it actually. I don't think I've had the heart to get rid of that. I don't know if I ever will. But whether it's being present, doing something that you love, or getting a coffee at a cafe and just sitting and looking around, or watching the world around you and just being. When was the last time you did that? Truly living in that moment, taking in surroundings, not on our phone, not trying to distract, existing and really living in and savoring that moment. In my humble opinion, we do not do that enough nowadays, at least not in the United States. I don't see it much. I wish I saw it more. I see it here and there, but again, we're just such a go, go, go kind of culture that, at least in my travels to Europe, I definitely see it more. And Kudos to the countries who have a better grasp on that. But, just globally too, I think we're a lot of us, we're really hooked on technology. We're addicted to social media, many of us at least. I'm not going to say everybody, but whether or not we realize it, it is a much bigger problem than we probably realize. Again, we're looking for validation and acceptance and understanding elsewhere. But one of the biggest takeaways that I have had in these 5 years is and I'm going to reflect this back onto you, how can we collectively give ourselves that validation, acceptance, and understanding? Because we are really the only ones that can give ourselves that at the end of the day. How can we better support ourselves on a day to day basis, first and foremost, but also those around us as well, if we have, other important people in our life that we want to show up for? But I think that's kind of what I hope you take away today is not only just hearing these things from little old me, but doing these reflections, literally maybe answering these prompts and these things that I've been giving you today on paper for yourself. These are the types of things that I do with my clients, right? Like getting to the root of our grief, of what we want for ourselves now, how we envision our life moving forward. And perfect segue into my last point here. And as we slowly start to finish up, just to tie up everything that I've been mentioning about living our life to the fullest and leaning into our dreams and the things that we want for ourselves, it saddens me to no end that my dad didn't get to experience certain things that he wanted to do. That goes for my mom as well. And I've talked about this on the podcast before and how important, this is just an example, but how important travel and exploration and adventure is for me personally. I have a whole separate podcast, if you weren't aware of that, called Taste Toast Travel. I co-host that with my husband because food, drink, and travel are such big, big things for me. They're very important in my life. And that was very true for my parents as well. And it's not like we were that family going on these, massive fancy vacations every year. We, did all right, but I don't think my parents had the money to do that. And in fact, the three of us really only traveled within the United States until I lived in Italy for 6 months in 2017. And they came and visited me while I was out there. It was the most amazing experience. I'm so grateful my parents did that. It was one of our last trips together. But I bring all of that up to say, because we're talking a lot about essence today, the essence of who we are and what that all entails. It's the essence of trying new things, going to new places, having new experiences that bring us outside of ourselves and our consciousness and our bubble and what we know and what we're comfortable with. And I say that because it's so easy for grief to make us want to be safe and comfortable and stable. And especially if you are in your more acute grief right now, the idea of branching out or doing anything remotely risky might feel very uncomfortable or scary. That is absolutely okay. Even if you're not in your acute grief and you're just on the struggle bus and you're just like, Tara, I'm just trying to get my footing. That's okay. I am never here to force you, only to instill some things to think about, right? What I like to think I am here to do is to gently encourage and empower you when you're ready to go out and do what might be a little uncomfortable. And I don't just mean traveling here. I don't mean you need to go spend thousands on a trip. Not at all. This might be a new job, a career change that you know is in your best interest or feels more aligned to you now than it perhaps did before. Because grief, again, it's this reckoning, it's this reawakening, and it's bringing out a new version of yourself that you've never been before. So think about that. What does that look like for you? Maybe it's making new friends or branching out into other social circles that feel more aligned to you. And that doesn't mean you have to like get rid of all your current friends or whatever. I've talked about that on the podcast before too. I have a whole slew of they're really more internet friends because I don't sadly live near anybody, but it's like all of these friends that I've made being in this this grief space now, working in this space that I do. And it's like, oh my God, where would I be without these people in my life? So even if it's a virtual friendship for the time being, do what you got to do, right? Maybe it's moving to a new place that is calling to you or feels like a better fit for you than your current surroundings, right? Any or all of this that I just mentioned and more are fair game. And so I challenge you with love today to give this some thought and ask yourself if you are truly embodying the essence of you. That is the theme of this episode today. I'm unofficially deciding, other than reflecting on 5 years without my dad. It is embodying the essence of you. And maybe you're listening to this conversation and saying to yourself, Tara, I don't even know what the essence of myself is. What are you talking about? That is exactly what I hope you explore today. Get curious, get excited. So often we feel we have nothing to be excited about, nothing to feel joyful about, nothing to get excited about. Again, after we go through a devastating loss or changes that we certainly didn't ask for. But we are here, right now. These are our circumstances. And if we can't change them, and if we can't bring someone back as much as we wish we could, we have a choice. And it is how we move forward from this moment on. And I just want you to know, and I want you to feel empowered and encouraged to be able to get curious about that and dig into that and make aligned, intentional decisions and take aligned, intentional actions that fit in with that new version of you. So that is where I will leave you today with this reflection. This might have gone in a direction you may or may not have seen coming, but here we are. I hope this resonated, and this is your invitation to get to know this sacred, beautiful side of yourself and know that you are so worthy and so deserving of knowing exactly who and what that is, what the essence of that is. And you deserve to live in accordance with that best version of yourself so authentically and in a way that just works for you. And that might take time. That might take a lot of time. You guys, I just want to also hammer home, like, again, I'm 5 years out from this now. I don't think I would have been talking like this in year one and year two, right? So again, please, as always, take what resonates with you in these episodes, leave the rest, come back to it later. You might feel differently, but these are my thoughts as someone that is 5 years out from losing her parents. And I would be remiss if I did not share these these thoughts with you. So I hope something that I said today hit for you, but one way or another, I just hope you are getting the support that you need. I am just an email away, I'm a DM away, and I just want to meet you wherever you're at and be there for you however I can. So remember, there's lots of links in the show notes with a variety of ways that I can help you do exactly that, from freebies to working with me one-on-one. So I would love to hear from you. And if this episode resonated with you, I would be so honored if you would share it with someone who could use it too, or any other episode on this podcast. It just helps me reach more and more grievers that could use this type of support. And be sure to leave a rating or review wherever you are listening from. All right, my friends, that's what I got for you today. I am sending you lots of love and light as always, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning into Morning Sips and Soul Shifts by the Life with Grief podcast and your host, Tara Accardo. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and as always, I encourage you to take what feels good and most aligned for you